The year was 1789. The United States, a fragile new nation, needed a leader, not a king, but something new. All eyes turned to George Washington, the hero of the Revolution and the Constitution's guiding hand. On April 30th, standing on the balcony of Federal Hall in New York City, Washington took the oath of office. Every action he took would set a precedent for the presidency. The Constitution offered only a framework. Washington had to define the role itself. He felt the weight of the nation's hopes and anxieties, writing of his painful sensations as he assumed office. America was far from united, rural, divided by region, and deeply suspicious of central authority. Washington's task was to forge a national identity and build a functioning government from scratch. His journey to New York became a national celebration with parades and cheering crowds. Washington's quiet dignity reassured a wary public. He was respected not for ambition, but for his sense of duty. He understood that symbolism mattered as much as substance. The presidency would be built step by step, with Washington as its living example. He was not just leading a country, he was inventing the office itself. The stakes were enormous and failure was a real possibility. Yet in Washington, Americans saw the promise of their new nation. His leadership would become the foundation of the American presidency. The experiment had begun. Washington's first challenge was to define the presidency, powerful but not monarchical. He rejected grand titles, insisting on the simple Mr. President. This signaled that the president was a citizen, not a ruler. Washington created the cabinet, appointing Hamilton, Jefferson, Knox, and Randolph to advise him. Their debates shaped policy and set a precedent for future presidents. He held formal but accessible receptions, balancing dignity with Republican simplicity. After a failed attempt to consult the Senate in person, he established written communication as the norm. Washington asserted the president's authority to enforce laws and act as chief diplomat. Most importantly, he set the two-term precedent by stepping down after 8 years. This voluntary surrender of power was a powerful statement against tyranny. Washington's careful choices molded the presidency into an office strong enough to lead, but humble enough to serve. He walked untrodden ground, always aware that his actions would echo through history. The presidency became a model of Republican leadership, not royal rule. Washington's example defined the office for generations. The American experiment in self-government took root. With the presidency established, Washington's administration faced the nation's crippling war debt. Alexander Hamilton, as Treasury Secretary, proposed the federal government assume state debts and create a national bank. This plan sparked fierce debate. Jefferson and Madison feared it gave too much power to the federal government and favored Northern interests. Washington, after careful consideration, sided with Hamilton, setting the nation on a path to financial stability. The new government's authority was soon tested by the Whiskey Rebellion. Western farmers, angered by attacks on distilled spirits, rebelled in Pennsylvania. Washington first called for peace, then led a militia force to enforce federal law. The rebellion collapsed without major violence. Washington's decisive response proved the federal government could enforce its laws. This was a stark contrast to the weak government under the Articles of Confederation. The nation's authority was now real, not just theoretical. Hamilton's vision and Washington's resolve built the foundations of federal power. The presidency became the engine of national unity and order. The United States was no longer just an idea, it was a functioning nation. Washington's leadership made it so. Across the Atlantic, the French Revolution divided Americans. Some cheered for liberty, others feared chaos. The old alliance with France clashed with economic ties to Britain. Washington believed the young nation couldn't survive another war. In 1793, he issued the Proclamation of Neutrality, keeping America out of European conflicts. This angered France and split public opinion, but Washington prioritized survival. British attacks on American ships nearly led to war, but Washington sent John Jay to negotiate. The Jay Treaty was unpopular but avoided conflict and secured vital trade. Meanwhile, Pinckney's treaty with Spain opened the Mississippi River and New Orleans to American trade. These diplomatic victories secured the nation's borders and economic future. Washington's patient, pragmatic diplomacy kept the fragile republic safe. Neutrality became a cornerstone of American foreign policy. The president's role as chief diplomat was firmly established. Washington's steady hand guided the nation through dangerous waters. The United States survived and began to thrive. Washington dreamed of unity, but his presidency saw the rise of fierce political factions. Hamilton's Federalists favored strong central government and ties to Britain. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans championed states' rights and supported France. Their rivalry split the nation and fueled a partisan press. Washington despised these divisions, fearing they threatened the Republic's survival. He tried to mediate, but the ideological gap was too wide. Even Washington faced harsh criticism from the opposition press. On the frontier, the government struggled to manage relations with Native American tribes. Treaties were signed, but westward expansion led to broken promises and conflict. The government's efforts to protect native lands were often undermined. The cycle of violence and dispossession would haunt the nation for generations. Washington's presidency revealed the challenges of unity and justice in a growing country. The seeds of America's political and moral struggles were sown. The experiment in self-government faced its first real tests. Washington knew the presidency was as much about public perception as power. He toured the states, meeting citizens and projecting unity. These journeys helped Americans see themselves as part of one nation. Washington's calm, steady demeanor inspired confidence, especially in crisis. During the Whiskey Rebellion and Jay Treaty protests, he stood firm, prioritizing national stability. He balanced authority with Republican modesty, living formally but not extravagantly. Washington sought to be a president for all Americans, not just one faction. He rose above political battles, cultivating an image of selfless service. This public persona was crucial in legitimizing the presidency. Americans trusted him because he embodied the ideals of the Revolution. Washington's leadership style set the tone for future presidents. The office became a symbol of unity and national purpose. The presidency was now a living institution, not just a title. Washington's legacy is inseparable from the contradiction of slavery. Born into Virginia's slaveholding elite, he owned hundreds at Mount Vernon. As president, he expressed private doubts but took no public stand against slavery. He feared confronting the issue would destroy the fragile Union. Washington signed the Fugitive Slave Act, reinforcing slaveholders' rights. In Philadelphia, he rotated enslaved workers to avoid Pennsylvania's emancipation laws. His actions protected his own interests, even as he struggled with the morality of slavery. In his will, Washington provided for the emancipation of the enslaved people he owned outright, after Martha's death. He also arranged for their care and education. This was a remarkable if limited gesture for his time. Washington's life embodied the paradox of a nation founded on liberty, but built on bondage. His final act acknowledged the injustice, but the institution endured. The contradiction would haunt America for generations. After 2 terms, Washington chose to step down, setting a precedent for peaceful transfer of power. He announced his retirement in a published farewell address, offering advice to the nation. Washington's central message was unity. He warned against the dangers of political factions. He feared parties would divide the nation and invite foreign interference. Washington also cautioned against permanent foreign alliances, urging independence in world affairs. He wasn't calling for isolation, but for careful engagement. His farewell address became a guiding document for future generations. The 2-term tradition he established lasted for nearly 150 years. Washington's wisdom shaped the nation's political culture. His warnings about division and entanglement echoed through American history. The address was his final gift to the country he helped create. Washington's example defined the presidency as a trust, not a possession. The experiment in democracy would continue, guided by his words. When Washington left office, the United States was transformed. The government was real, its authority respected, and its borders secure. Washington built the presidency from the ground up, turning the Constitution's outline into a living institution. His actions set enduring precedents: the cabinet, executive privilege, foreign policy leadership, and the State of the Union. Most importantly, he established the peaceful transfer of power. Washington's commitment to unity held the fragile nation together. His warnings against factions and foreign entanglements shaped American identity. He gave the country time to grow and define itself. The presidency became a symbol of national purpose and stability. Washington was not perfect, His ownership of enslaved people remains a painful contradiction. Yet his sense of duty and vision for the Republic shaped the nation's future. He proved that a government of the people could endure. The American experiment survived and flourished because of his leadership.